The message on his phone had said 4 words. "We know about her." She had read it again, looked up at him across the lamplight and the quiet they had spent 3 months carefully building, and said, "Here is what we do." She had meant it. She still meant it. But that was before she found out what her referred to. Welcome back. And if this is your first time meeting Simone and Seo-jun, stop here and go watch part 1 first. Because this story was never about how they fell into each other. It was about what happened after they finally did. And tonight, for the first time since Seoul taught them how to stay still around each other, something is about to break that silence wide open. It started the way most dangerous things start. Not with the thing itself, with the silence around the thing. She noticed it on a Tuesday, 3 days after the message. Seo-jun had told her it was handled the rival organization, the positioning, the threat, and she had believed him the way she had learned to believe him, not entirely, but enough. He had been more open in the weeks since the Yeoksam incident than she had ever experienced from him. He sat with her in the evenings and told her things in pieces, slowly, the way a man removes weight from a structure that has been bearing it for too long. She understood it was costing him something each time. She received it accordingly. So when the silence appeared, she catalogued it carefully before drawing conclusions. He was still present, still attentive. The hand on her ankle, the coffee in the morning, the particular quality of stillness he brought to shared rooms that communicated, without words, that she was the fixed point. None of that changed. But there were 2 phone calls he took outside. A meeting with Ryun that ran long and ended with the particular flat composure Seo-jun wore when he had just made a decision he was not proud of. And once at the kitchen island with her book, she looked up to find him watching her from the doorway with an expression she could not immediately name. Not love. She knew what that looked like on him now. It was quieter than most people's love, and it landed differently, with weight rather than lightness, the way everything about him landed. This was different. This was the expression of a man trying to calculate something and finding the math kept coming out wrong. She returned to her book. She noted the expression. She filed it where she kept the things she was not yet ready to force into language. The name arrived on a Thursday through a door she had not expected. She was at her consulting firm, midway through a risk assessment for a corporate client in Yeouido, when her phone buzzed with a message from a number she didn't recognize. No introduction, just a name and an address. Kim Soo-ha, Sinchon. She will tell you what he won't. She stared at the message for a long time. Then she did what she had been trained to do. She ran the number. Untraceable, prepaid, activated 48 hours ago. She cross-referenced the address. A residential building in Sinchon, quiet street, nothing flagged. She sat with it through the rest of the afternoon. Did not tell Seo-jun. This was not withholding. She had a precise understanding of the difference between withholding and gathering information before you knew what you had. She had spent years in professional spaces where those were not the same thing. She went to Sinchon on Friday morning. Kim Soo-ha was 31 years old, and she opened the door like she had been expecting her. Small apartment. Careful. The kind of space arranged by someone who had very little but wanted it exact. She offered tea. Simone accepted it because declining felt like a closing of something that might need to remain open. They sat across from each other, and the woman looked at her steadily, without malice, which Simone had not expected. "How long have you been with him?" Soo-ha asked. "We aren't—" Simone stopped. 3 months. Soo-ha nodded. She held her cup with both hands. "He told you about his business." "Enough of it. Did he tell you about the Yoon family?" The name was familiar. Part of the intelligence Seo-jun had shared with her after Yeoksam, the rival organization, the positioning, the threat neutralized. She had heard the name in that context. "Some," Simone said carefully. "Did he tell you that he was supposed to marry the Yoon daughter?" The room went very quiet. Not the room. Her. 3 years ago, Soo-ha continued with a gentleness that somehow made it worse. It was an arrangement. Political, mostly. The kind of alliance that gets made between organizations that are circling each other and choose to stop. Kang Seo-jun and Yoon Ji-yeon. It was announced internally. It was agreed. Simone set her cup down. "What happened?" "He ended it." Soo-ha looked at her. 6 months before it was finalized. No formal explanation given. Something happened between them, I don't know what. I was peripheral to it. I worked for the Yoon family then, briefly, but whatever it was, it ended badly. For everyone. The recent threats, Simone said slowly. The Yoon family never stopped believing he humiliated them. 3 years of managed distance and then something shifted. New leadership in the family. Yoon Ji-yeon's younger brother took over in January. Suha paused. He is considerably less measured than his father was. Simone was quiet for a moment. Processing? Filing. Why are you telling me this? Suha looked at her with an expression that was tired and specific. Because they are not threatening Kang Seo-jun. That message on his phone, we know about her. They're threatening you, and I don't think he has told you that. The air in the small apartment thinned. They know he has someone, Suha said. They know she matters. The younger Yoon, he grew up watching his sister get returned like something sent back to a warehouse. He is not interested in patience or politics. He is interested in removing whatever Kang Seo-jun values most and letting him live with that. Simone held the woman's gaze. How do you know this? Because he approached me 2 weeks ago. Asked me what I knew about the woman Kang Seo-jun was spending time with. Suha set her cup down. I told him nothing. Then I found your number. A long silence. Why? Simone said. Suha looked at her. Something moved in her face, something old and specific and quietly settled. Because I was the woman before you. Not like that, not romantically, but I was close to him, for a time, in a professional capacity. I watched him from a distance for long enough to understand what it meant when he finally let someone in. She paused. He never let me in. He never let anyone in the way you mean it. And I'm not telling you this to threaten you or to claim something. I am telling you because that matters, and I don't want it destroyed by a young man's ego before it has the chance to become what it should be. Simone did not speak for a long moment. Then she said, He knows about the threat. He's known since the message. Yes, Suha said. And he hasn't told me that I'm the target. Suha said nothing, which was its own answer. She drove back to her apartment in Mapo with the particular stillness of someone who has received information that has not yet finished rearranging the furniture. She was not afraid. She assessed the threat with the professional clarity she had spent years sharpening, and the threat was manageable. She had operated in higher-risk environments. She knew how to handle this. What she was not managing as cleanly was the other thing. He had known. For 3 days he had known that she was the target, and he had sat beside her on the couch and made her coffee in the morning and held her face with steady hands and said, Here's what we do. And he had not told her. She sat on the floor of her apartment, back against the couch, and held that fact with the same flat palms she had pressed against her bathroom tiles the night she had almost quit. 14 months ago. When she had been sitting on the floor for a different reason and the weight had been different and she had not yet known what this man could become to her. She had asked him for one thing. Don't protect me by keeping me at a distance. Don't manage what I know because you think it's safer for me. He had looked at her across the lamplight and said, I believe you. And then he had done exactly the thing she had asked him not to do. She pressed her hand flat against her sternum and let herself feel the full weight of it. Not the threat, the choice. The fact that when it had mattered, when it had been her safety and her autonomy and her right to know the truth about her own situation, he had reverted, had chosen the old calculus, had decided quietly, privately, that he knew better. She did not cry, but she sat on the floor of her apartment for a long time, and the ache was not like the old ache. The old ache had been about wanting something she didn't have. This one was about something she had, and the specific fear of what it meant that the person who held it could still make that choice. She called him at 7. I need to come over. A pause. I'll have No, she said. Just you. Another pause, shorter. I'll be here. He opened the door himself. She walked past him into the apartment. The city was doing its slow evening descent outside the windows. The books were on their shelf. The lamp in the corner threw its usual warm light across the floor between them. She turned and looked at him. He was reading her face. She knew what he was doing. The thorough, silent cataloging, The same one he had turned on her the very first day, the one that saw everything and revealed nothing about what it had seen. "Sit down," she said. Something moved in his eyes. He sat. She remained standing. She needed the geometry of it, the ability to move if moving became necessary. "Kim Suha," she said. His expression did not change, which was its own kind of answer. "She found me," Simone said, "or someone with access to my number found me through her. She told me about the Yoon family, the arrangement 3 years ago, the brother." She paused. "She told me that the message wasn't a threat to you. It was a threat to me." Seo-jun looked at her steadily, not with the composure she had mistaken for coldness in the early months, with the composure of a man who knew exactly what he had done and was sitting with it without flinching. "You knew," she said. "Yes." One word. Not a defense, not a negotiation, just a confirmation, delivered with the full weight of what it meant. She looked at him for a long moment. "When?" "The night of the message. Ryun confirmed it the following morning." 3 days ago." "Yes." She pressed her hands together in front of her, the specific gesture she made when she was managing something large in a small container. "Seo-jun, I asked you for one thing." "I know. I told you exactly what I needed from you, not as a preference, as a condition. I told you that I understood your world, that I had kept you alive in it, that I was not a civilian who needed to be protected from the truth." She stopped. "And when the truth was about my own safety, you decided you knew better than I did what I should have access to." He stood. She was aware of the movement, the instinct to close distance, and she did not step back, but she also did not make it easy. "I was trying to—" "I know what you were trying to do." Her voice was even, completely even, which was not the same as fine. "You were trying to protect me. You were managing the situation. You told yourself that you needed more information before you alarmed me unnecessarily. You found very good reasons to delay." She looked at him. "And every one of those reasons had your fingerprints on it, not mine." He was quiet. He did not attempt to reframe it. She noted that too. "This is who I am," she said. And something changed in her voice, not breaking because she did not break, but something underneath it that was close enough to raw that she felt it herself. "I have spent my entire adult life building the capacity to handle hard truths. I have been in rooms where the wrong decision gets people killed. I chose this work. I chose you knowing what your life was. And when it became about me specifically, when I most needed to know you, took that from me." The silence had a different quality than any they had inhabited together. Not the full, pressed silence of something wanting to be said. Something that had been said and was settling into the space it would occupy permanently. "You're right," he said. She looked at him. "There is no version of what I did that was about you," he said. He was not performing honesty. The distinction mattered to her. "It was about me. About the specific thing I told you about in this apartment 3 months ago. What I would become if I let something matter and then lost it." He stopped. "You being the target means the threat is not abstract anymore. It means the thing I was afraid of has a specific shape, and I handled that fear by managing information, by making myself the one who knew so that I was the one who could—" He stopped. "Control it," she said quietly. He met her gaze. "Yes." She looked at him across the warm room and the city outside and the 3 months of something being carefully built between them, and she felt simultaneously 2 things that she did not try to resolve. The anger, clean and legitimate, and underneath it, the specific devastating clarity of a man telling her the truest thing about himself. Not performing, not constructing, arriving at the truth through the discomfort of it, which was the only way she had ever trusted anyone to arrive there. She said nothing for a moment. Then she said, "Sit down." He sat. She sat across from him. "Tell me everything," she said. "Not the version you've edited for my comfort. Not the version where you've already begun handling it. Everything. The Yoon family, the brother, what Ryun knows, what you know, what you're afraid of." His eyes held hers. That last one especially, she said. He talked for an hour. She listened the way she had always listened, completely, without interruption, her eyes on him and her mind moving over the information and filing it and mapping it in real time. The Yoon family history, the arrangement, the end of it. She noticed he was brief about that part, brief in a way that was careful rather than evasive, and she noted it and let it pass for now. The brother. The intelligence Ryun had been running for 3 weeks, the 3 possible approaches to the threat, their likelihood, their countermeasures. He told her all of it. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. The Eastern approach is wrong, she said. If the brother is prioritizing impact over strategy, he won't use the entry point that requires the most coordination. He'll use the one that allows the most personal involvement. Seo-jun looked at her. Something in his eyes she recognized as the particular attention he gave to information he immediately understood was correct. The Mapo apartment, she said. Not here. Not any venue you control. He'll go for somewhere that feels personal to him. Somewhere that communicates the message clearly. She paused. My apartment. A silence. I've already thought about relocating, she said before he could say it. Not because I'm frightened, because I understand threat management, and I want it to be my decision. It should be your decision, he said. She looked at him directly. Not an overreaction this time. Something shifted at the corner of his mouth. Barely. Less than the smile. But there. Not an overreaction, he agreed quietly. She exhaled, set her hands flat on her knees, looked at the space between them, not with the professional distance of 14 months ago, not with the managed restraint of the early weeks, but with the clear-eyed acknowledgement of 2 people who have just walked through something and emerged on the other side of it still facing each other. I'm angry, she said. I want to be clear about that. I'm not past it. I know. But I also understand what you told me just now. She met his gaze. About fear, about control. I understand that you are not going to become a different person overnight, that there will be moments where the instinct to protect by managing is faster than the commitment to trust me with the truth. She paused. What I need to know is that when you catch yourself doing it, you stop. Not after. Not once I find out through someone else. During. He was very still. Can you do that? She said. He looked at her for a long time. The particular thoroughness of it, the taking inventory, the reading of something he was not yet ready to say, and then past it, into something less composed and more real. I don't know, he said. I want to tell you yes, but the honest answer is that I don't know. The instinct is... He stopped. Old, and very fast. She held his gaze. That is the most honest thing you've said tonight. You asked for honest. I did. She was quiet for a moment. I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for the attempt, and for it to cost you something when you fail. Not performance, not apology, just the actual work of changing the habit. I understand what you're asking, he said. And? He looked at her with the directness that had no performance in it. The one she had come to understand was the rarest version of him, the one that appeared in lamplight and not in meeting rooms. And I am telling you I will try, he said, with the full knowledge that trying means failing sometimes and letting you see it, which is the part that is hardest for me. I know, she said softly. Being seen failing, he said. Being the man who made the wrong decision for the wrong reasons. In front of you specifically. Why in front of me specifically? He held her gaze. Because you are the only person whose estimation of me I can't afford to be indifferent to. The room was very quiet. She looked at him across the small table and felt the opened place in her chest ache in a way that was not like pain. Not entirely, but was adjacent to it in the way that all the things that matter are adjacent to pain because they have weight in weight presses. You haven't lost it, she said quietly. He looked at her. My estimation, she said. You haven't lost it. I want you to know that. Not because I'm forgiving easily or because the anger isn't real, but because... She stopped, found the word. Because the thing that matters is whether you know what you did, not whether you can defend it, and you know. Something moved through him, not visibly. The kind of movement that happens under a controlled surface in a person who has learned to contain everything and registers only if you know how to read the container. She was very good at reading the container. He reached across the table and set his hand over hers. Not a gesture of comfort. Not romantic in the performed sense. The gesture of a man setting something down deliberately. Choosing something in real time, in a room with no audience, with full knowledge of what the choice required from him. She turned her hand over under his and held it. She moved out of the Mapo apartment the following weekend. Temporarily, with the clean efficiency of a woman who had moved 14 times before this, and knew exactly how to strip a space down to what mattered, and carry it without ceremony. She stayed with a colleague from the consulting firm for 6 days, while Ryun's team swept and secured an alternative location. Seo-jun did not offer his apartment. She noted the restraint. He was learning the difference between presence and management. She did not comment on it. On the 4th day, Ryun called her directly. She had been expecting this. Not a specific call, but the conversation. The conversation that existed between them in the margins. The one that had been building since the nod in the corridor outside the incident room. The one that was about what she was to Seo-jun and what that meant for the work of keeping him safe. The Yoon situation, Ryun said. His voice was its usual register. Underneath it, what she had come to recognize as his version of careful. We have a line on the brother's current position. He has been in contact with 2 independent contractors, not organization men. Freelance, which means unpredictable timing. You need another set of eyes on the assessment. Yes, Ryan said. Simply. She looked at her coffee. Send me what you have. A pause. You're sure? I'm not on his detail, she said. I'm giving you an independent assessment. There's no conflict. Another pause. Longer. He doesn't know I'm calling you. I assumed. He would. Ryun stopped, which was the most words she had ever heard him fail to say. He would want to be the one to decide whether to involve you. Yes, she said. He would. She paused. Send me the files, Ryun. A silence that had something in it she recognized as the sound of a very contained man making a decision. Then, 15 minutes. She sat at the kitchen table in her colleague's apartment and worked through the intelligence files with the focused clarity that was the most natural state she had ever known. Cross-referencing movement patterns, flagging anomalies, building the tactical picture with the methodical precision of a decade of doing this under conditions considerably less comfortable than a borrowed kitchen. She sent her assessment back in 2 hours. 7 pages. Flagged 4 critical gaps in the current coverage plan. Recommended a restructure of the outer detail rotation and identified the most probable approach window. Ryun responded with 2 words. Thank you. For Ryun, that was a declaration. She told Seo-jun that evening. She did it directly, without preamble, across the kitchen island in his apartment, where she had come for dinner and was staying, as she sometimes did now, without it being a managed thing, without a conversation about what it meant, simply because it was where she wanted to be. Ryun called me, she said. The Yoon contractor situation. I ran an independent assessment. He was at the stove. He went still. He did it without telling you, she said. I want you to know that I know that, and I'm telling you directly. He turned. His expression was the composed one, but his eyes were doing the other thing, the moving under the surface. He needed the assessment, she said. You would have debated whether to ask me. He didn't have the time for that particular argument. A long pause. He was right, Seo-jun said finally. She looked at him. About the assessment, he said, and about not asking me first. He turned back to the stove. I would have debated it. I know. For the wrong reasons again. Probably. He was quiet for a moment. What did you find? She told him. All 7 pages from memory, with the precision she brought to everything that mattered. He listened without interruption. Twice she saw the specific attentiveness of a man receiving information he recognized as correct and reassessing in real time. When she finished, he said, The East Corridor rotation. I had the same concern. Then we're aligned. We're aligned, he said quietly. She watched him at the stove. This man she had spent 14 months circling from the correct professional distance and 3 months learning from the inside. The man who was not easy and had never pretended to be, who was not safe in the way that most people use that word and would not be, but who was she found the word slowly, turned it over, found it accurate, real, completely, entirely real, no constructed surface between them anymore, or not a permanent one. The surface came up sometimes, old habit, old armor. And then he caught himself, and she saw the catch, and that was not nothing at all. "The thing you said," she said, "about the arrangement with the Yoon family, 3 years ago." He was very still. "You were brief about it," she said. "I noticed." A pause. "Yes. I'm not asking you to tell me everything tonight." She held his gaze when he turned. "But I want you to know that I'm asking. Not now. When you're ready, I want to know what happened." He looked at her for a long moment. The city outside was doing its permanent thing, indifferent and alive. "It's not a story that reflects well on me," he said. "Most true stories don't," she said. Something moved in his eyes. Not the smile, something quieter. The expression of a man who keeps encountering a version of himself in her that he is not yet sure he deserves. "I know," he said. "I'll tell you." "When you're ready," she said again, because she had meant it and because she understood that this was how it worked, not all at once, not surgically extracted, but given, piece by piece, in the order he could manage. She had time. She was staying. The decision sat in her chest with the particular solidity of something chosen rather than arrived at. Not a feeling, a fact. The Yoon situation resolved on a Wednesday night. She was not there. She was at her new apartment in Yongsan, secured, assessed, every sightline accounted for when Rian called. "It's done," he said. "The brother has agreed to terms. The contractors have been handled." "Seojin?" "Fine." A pause. "He asked me to call you first." She sat with that for a moment. Then, "Tell him I'm here." 20 minutes later, he was at her door. She let him in. He stood in the small hallway of her new apartment and looked at her, and she looked at him, and there was a moment brief, complete, where neither of them said anything, because the relief of the other person being in the room made words temporarily irrelevant. Then she said, "Come in." He sat on her couch, her furniture, her books stacked by the window, her reading lamp in the corner, and she sat beside him, and he was quiet for a while in the way that came after high-tension situations fully resolved, the slow decompression of a man whose body had been holding something and was now permitted to set it down. She did not fill the silence. After a while, he said, "Yoon Ji-yeon." She turned. "The arrangement," he said. "What happened?" She was still, completely. "She wanted out," he said. "She had wanted out of her family's world for years, and I used that. I used her wanting out as leverage in a negotiation with her father that I had no other card to play. I suggested the arrangement knowing she would not refuse, knowing she had no real choice." He stopped. "And then 6 months later, when the political situation had shifted and I no longer needed the alliance, I ended it, without accounting for what that cost her. Without—" He stopped again. She had told her family she wanted to leave. She had used our arrangement as the reason. When it ended, she had nothing. The room was very quiet. "I have thought about it many times," he said. "I have no clean way to tell it. There was no version where I was acting in her interest. I was managing a problem. She was part of the solution, and then the solution changed, and she became—" He looked at his hands. "Peripheral." Simone was quiet for a long moment. "How is she now?" she said. He looked up. "Yoon Ji-yeon," she said. "How is she?" A pause. "She left Korea 2 years ago. She is in Paris, I believe. She has a gallery." "Did you—" "I made arrangements," he said. "Financially. Anonymously. It was insufficient." He held her gaze. "I know that. I'm not telling you it was sufficient." She looked at him. The man across from her on the couch, in the lamplight, with the ink on his neck and the books he had read, and the coffee he made without being asked, and the hands that had not been entirely steady the night in Yoksam. This man who had done the thing he just described. who was sitting here telling her about it without softening it or reframing it, who had not chosen the version of the story where his reasons justified the cost. This was what she had asked for. Don't hide what matters anymore. She had meant it. She had not known what it would feel like to receive it. That's the thing, she said slowly, that you believe makes you impossible to love. He looked at her. It's the thing you've been waiting for me to find out, she said. The thing underneath the control and the distance and the 14 months of silence, the evidence of who you are when the calculus wins. He said nothing. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't matter, she said. What you did to that woman matters. It happened. You can't revise it. She held his gaze steadily. But I'm also not going to tell you that you are only that moment. People are not only their worst calculations. You know that. What you did about it afterward, the arrangements, inadequate as you know they were, that also tells me who you are. He was very still. What tells me the most, she said, is that you just told me, without me asking, without a door being forced. She paused. You told me because you said you would and you meant it, even though it cost you something visible to say it. His eyes held hers with the particular intensity she had come to understand was not composure, but its opposite. The fullness behind the surface. Everything pressing against everything. I don't know what I am to you, he said. His voice was even. Most of the time I can read a situation, I cannot read this one. I don't know if what you feel is... He stopped. I don't have the right language for it. I've spent a long time not needing the language. She looked at him for a moment. Then she said, You are the only person in my adult life who has made me want to stop moving. The sentence landed in the room and stayed there. I've been moving since I was 7, she said. Every time something became real, I had already planned the next departure. I told myself it was my nature, that I was built for motion. She paused. And then I spent 14 months in one building watching you drink black coffee and read before meetings and adjust your pace in narrow corridors so I didn't have to. And I realized I had not once thought about the next placement. He was completely still. You are not easy, she said. You're not safe. You have just told me something that confirms every complicated thing about you. She held his gaze. And I am sitting here, not managing the exit, not drafting the resignation, sitting here. The city hummed below them, indifferent and alive. The lamp in the corner threw its warm light across the floor between them. He reached out and took her hand. Not gently. With the full, deliberate intention of a man who had stopped calculating the cost and was simply choosing, the way she had asked him to, from the beginning. I'm going to keep failing, he said quietly. I'm going to choose control over trust sometimes. I'm going to make the wrong decision for the wrong reasons. I'm telling you this, because you deserve to know what you're staying for. I know, she said. And you're still... I'm still, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, the 3 words she had never heard from him and had stopped expecting. The 3 words that arrived not as performance or declaration, but as simple, irrefutable fact, the way everything true about him arrived with weight, without flourish, meaning everything they said, don't leave me. She held his gaze. I'm not leaving, she said. And she meant it with every clear-eyed, fully informed, deliberately chosen part of herself. She was not naive. His world was not going to become uncomplicated. There would be nights of managed silence and decisions made without her, and the slow work of a man learning to loosen a control he had spent his whole life building. There would be the parts of him she had not yet reached, and the parts that might not be reachable. The ongoing negotiation of 2 people whose worlds had no natural overlap. She knew all of this. She was choosing it anyway. Not in spite of the weight of it. Because of it. Because anything worth staying for had weight, and she had been moving her whole life, and she was done. He pulled her into him and she let him, and his arms came around her with the steadiness of someone who had stopped pretending the distance was for her benefit and had finally, completely, let himself have this. The city breathed its slow, indifferent breath outside. Inside, something settled, not ended, not resolved in the clean way things resolve in simpler stories, but chosen. Clearly. By both of them. With full knowledge of the cost. That was, she understood, the only kind of permanence that was actually permanent. The fragile kind. The kind you have to keep choosing. The kind that requires you to show up even when showing up means being seen failing, the only kind worth having. She pressed her face against his shoulder and felt him breathe, once, slowly. The breath of a man who had finally stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop and let himself believe, just briefly, that the quiet was real. "Tell me something," she said. "What?" he said, flat, eyes not. "Something you've never told anyone." A long pause. Outside the city. Inside the lamp. His arms around her, steady and warm and deliberate. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. "I used to read to fall asleep, until I was maybe 20. Then I stopped. I think because the books reminded me of..." He paused. "Of someone I was before all of this." She was still. "And then 14 months ago," he said, "I started again." She understood what he was telling her. The books on his shelf, floor to ceiling, lived in, some stacked horizontally where vertical space had run out, a few with pages folded to mark places. She had noticed them the very first night she came to his apartment. She had not let herself ask about them then. She did not need to ask now. He had already told her everything she needed to know, not in a single confession, not in one clean moment of revelation. In pieces, slowly, the way a man removes weight from a structure that has been bearing it for too long. The temperature in a room, quietly adjusted. The pace in a narrow corridor, matched to hers without a word. 3 years of a choice he could not undo, spoken plainly in lamplight without softening. And underneath all of it, every day for 14 months, a man returning to the thing he had put down when he stopped believing he was still the person who deserved it. She had been the reason he picked it back up. She let that sit in her chest without trying to make it smaller. "Seo-jun," she said. "Yes." "I'm not going anywhere." Not a reassurance, not comfort. A fact, stated with the same directness she had brought to every true thing she had ever said to him. The way she had said, "I want a lot of things in a narrow corridor," and then stop calculating in a room in Yeoksam. And I'm asking anyway, across a table in his apartment when she had asked for the most dangerous thing he had ever been asked for. She had always meant everything she said to him. She meant this most of all. He was quiet for a long moment. The city moved below them, indifferent and alive and full of everything it had always been. Then he said, "I know." And she could hear in those 2 words that he did, not performing belief, not managing toward it. Actually, finally, in the place underneath all the calculation and control and careful distance, believing it. That was the thing she had been waiting for, she understood. Not the declaration, not the moment where he said the words, the moment where he received them, where he let them land without immediately building a structure around them to keep them at a manageable distance. He had let it land. She felt him beside her in the warm room, the particular quality of his stillness shifting into something she did not have a professional category for, and did not need one. The stillness of a man who has put something down that was very heavy, who is standing in the absence of the weight and discovering slowly that he knows how to exist without it. She had no name for what they were. It did not require a name. It required only this: 2 people in a room, choosing each other with full knowledge of the cost, not because the cost was small, but because what they had built together was worth more than the comfort of a smaller choice. She thought about the woman she had been 17 months ago, stepping off a plane into Seoul in October with her father's discipline and her military intelligence and her practiced unreadability. Standing at her post in a building full of dangerous men, watching every door, counting every exit. Keeping someone alive and carefully, daily, deliberately not thinking about the things she felt. That woman had been so certain that self-containment was the same as strength. She knew better now. Strength was this: staying when staying required something from you. Asking for the truth even when the truth was heavy. Sitting on the floor of your own apartment with your palms flat against the tile and letting yourself feel the full weight of something instead of filing it away. Being seen, letting someone be seen in return. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. Harder than any room she had ever read, any threat she had ever neutralized, any exit she had ever mapped. It was also the only thing, she understood now, that had ever made her want to stop mapping exits. His hand moved. The smallest pressure against her back. Barely there. The gesture of a man who had spent his whole life keeping the full weight of himself away from anyone who might be affected by it, and was learning, slowly, to stop. She closed her eyes. Outside, Seoul breathed its permanent indifferent breath, the way it had on every night she had spent in this city. Every night she had stood at her post and done her job and come home to her apartment in Mapo and her bathroom floor and the careful management of everything she felt. None of those nights were wasted. She understood that now too. Every one of them had been the approach. Every careful calibration, every professional distance maintained, every resignation drafted and unsubmitted, all of it had been the long route to exactly here. A couch in Yongsan. A man she had kept alive and had frightened and had made laugh for the first time in 14 months and had confronted and had stayed for. A city outside that did not care about any of it, and a lamp in the corner that threw its warm light across the floor between them, and a silence that was not absence but fullness, complete and undemanding. The silence of two people who had finally run out of reasons to perform. She did not need to say anything else. Neither did he. They sat together in the quiet, and the city moved below them, and the lamp hummed softly, and outside the July night settled into the particular stillness that comes just before dawn, when Seoul briefly, almost imperceptibly exhales. This was what it looked like when something worked. Not perfectly, not without the weight of everything it had cost to get here, but genuinely, durably, in the way that requires both people to keep choosing it every day without guarantees. She was going to keep choosing it. So was he. That was enough. That had always been going to be enough. Leave me a comment before you go. Simone found out he hid the truth to protect her. She stayed anyway. The question is, was that strength? Or was it the one thing she should not have forgiven? Tell me what you think.